Kale's boots clicked against the metallic floor of the station with a rhythm that made him feel like he was composing a suspenseful symphony entirely on his own nerves. The corridors stretched into shadows, their walls scratched and dented by decades of neglect, punctuated only by the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional flicker of a dying light. He adjusted the strap of his bag, which contained a meager assortment of tools, scanning devices, and snacks he probably wouldn't eat because his stomach refused to stop twisting. The rumors had been relentless, whispered in the cantinas of orbiting freighters, in the static-laden chat channels where humans and aliens argued over everything from ship maintenance to interstellar politics. "She eats humans," one drunk mechanic had slurred. "No, she eats emotions first," a trader had said, dead serious. Kale wasn't sure which was worse, the idea that she might physically devour humans or that she might harvest their dignity like some cosmic tax. He rounded a corner and froze. There she was. Not lurking in the shadows, not dripping menace like he'd imagined, but sitting cross-legged on the floor with her long ears tilted lazily, examining a holographic map of the station that floated above her hands. She looked human tall, almost impossibly poised, skin pale but with a subtle shimmer that caught the dim light, but the ears marked her immediately. Long, elegant, expressive. They twitched in a way that seemed almost too knowing, as if she could read his thoughts the moment he blinked. Kale opened his mouth to speak, but the sound stuck somewhere between panic and curiosity. "What do you do to humans?" He blurted, words tumbling out like a spilled bag of marbles. "Stop, do you actually eat them?" Her head tilted in that same lazy, mocking way. For a moment, Kale thought she might actually be offended. Then her lips curled into a smile that was equal parts amusement and disbelief. "Eat them?" she asked, voice melodic, almost musical, like wind through crystalline pipes. "Do I look like a dinner plate with ears?" She flicked her own long ears at him, as if that could explain everything. Kale felt his pulse jump, not because of fear, but because he didn't know whether he was supposed to apologize, faint, or hand over his backpack as an offering. His words faltered. "I mean, everyone's saying rumors." He waved vaguely at the station as if the walls themselves had mouths. "Rumors," she repeated, the corners of her mouth twitching. "Ah, humans, always so dramatic. Do you also believe your toaster is plotting against you?" Her ears quivered, and Kale suppressed a nervous laugh, the tension loosening slightly. He had imagined confrontation, threat, maybe even a chase across zero-gravity corridors, but instead he had been met with a sarcastic alien with impeccable comedic timing. "You're not going to eat me?" he asked cautiously, taking a small step forward, his boots clanking like an offbeat drum in the empty corridor. "I have better things to do than chew on fragile humans," she said, tilting her head, her ears flicking at angles that almost seemed to punctuate the humor. "But if it makes you feel better, I promise to chew only metaphorically." Kale swallowed, realizing that her humor was as alien as her ears, yet strangely comforting. She shifted in the airless gravity, standing fluidly, her presence commanding but not menacing. "Do you want a demonstration?" she asked. Before he could answer, objects around them began to lift gently, tools, a floating bottle of electrolyte gel, even a small crate of maintenance drones hovering like confused fireflies. "I can move them with my mind," she said, ears twitching. "Though I admit, I mostly do it to annoy station janitors." One drone buzzed lazily into Kale's face and he flinched, narrowly avoiding a collision. She caught it effortlessly and held it up like a trophy. "See, totally harmless." Kale blinked, his fear dissolving into something awkward between admiration and embarrassment. You're just showing off." "Perhaps," she said. "But if it helps you calm down, consider it a peace offering." She twirled her fingers, sending the drone back to its original place, and then floated closer, her long ears quivering like twin metronomes keeping time with her grin. "Besides, I find humans amusing. So nervous, so certain of doom at every corner, you'd make a delightful snack if I were into that sort of thing." Hale couldn't decide whether to feel insulted or relieved. "I guess that means I'm safe. For now," she said, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial whisper. "Though if you keep tripping over your own boots in zero gravity, all bets are off." He tried to muster a witty retort, but the only thing that came out was a dry cough. She laughed softly, a sound like wind ringing through metal tubes. "Relax, you humans and your melodrama, let me show you around instead. I promise it's less lethal than it looks." Kale followed cautiously, noticing the subtle quirks of the station he had never seen before. Panels that seemed ordinary were actually interactive displays, wires that hummed faintly with energy, and a corridor that seemed to shift slightly when she walked beside it. Every corner held a microcosm of her power, controlled, playful, never cruel. At one junction, Kale stumbled over a maintenance droid, sending it spinning into a wall. She caught it mid-flight, ears twitching, and handed it back to him with a mock stern look. For someone so concerned about being eaten, you handle technology like it's edible. He laughed despite himself, tension unraveling further with each awkward encounter. So, you're not evil, you just exist in ways humans can't really understand. Precisely, she said, floating lightly above the floor, ears wagging as if nodding at the accuracy. And you should try it sometime, it's surprisingly liberating. As they moved deeper into the station, Kale began noticing the odd humor in the situation. A station he had imagined as a haunted trap of terror was instead a playground of alien ingenuity, occasionally punctuated by sarcastic commentary from a tall woman with ears that defied gravity. Rumors, he realized, were as fragile as the human mind that repeated them. And maybe, just maybe, the line between predator and protector wasn't fixed at all, it bent and twisted, like the station corridors themselves, in the presence of someone who could make even fear feel oddly entertaining. By the time they reached the observation deck, Kale felt an unfamiliar warmth, a mixture of relief, fascination, and cautious friendship. Stars glittered outside, distant, cold, and infinite, but somehow less threatening in her company. She leaned on the railing, ears twitching, watching him fumble with a floating tablet. "You know," she said lightly, "humans always ask the wrong questions. What you really should have asked is, do you like jokes?" Kale blinked and then laughed, the sound echoing off the metallic walls. I think I'll live," he said, realizing that maybe surviving a station with a powerful, sarcastic, long-eared alien was more about humor than heroism. And for the first time since stepping aboard, he believed it. The alarm flared with a shrill urgency that made Kale jump, sending his boots skidding against the smooth metal floor. Red lights swept across the corridors in an almost choreographed panic, flashing like a strobe at a poorly attended dance club. He looked at Alara, whose long ears quivered in rhythm with the lights, and for a moment he thought she might actually be dancing along. She raised a single finger, and the floating holographic map above her hand expanded with a hiss of electric light. "Malfunctioning security drone," she announced, her tone perfectly calm as if she were describing a minor inconvenience rather than a machine gone rogue. Or, in human terms, a tiny metal terror with a grudge. Kale swallowed. "A drone, it's going to kill us. Not unless you insist on testing gravity today." She flicked her ears, and the tools scattered around them rose gently into the air, orbiting them like a chaotic solar system. One of the floating wrenches nearly smacked Kale in the head, and he ducked instinctively. "See, totally harmless," she said, her voice teasing. "Mostly." Before he could respond, the drone rounded a corner, its red sensors sweeping the hall with alarming precision. Kale's stomach lurched. He hadn't even realized he was holding his breath. The thing buzzed past them, scanning, snapping little mechanical arms like claws. Alara waved a hand, and the drone froze midair, tilting awkwardly as if trying to comprehend its sudden immobility. She chuckled. "You humans always expect a fight to be straightforward. Here, let me show you a shortcut." With a subtle gesture, gravity shifted locally, and Kale felt the floor tilt beneath him. Tools and small crates slid across the deck like toys on a sloped board, and the drone floated helplessly as if weightless. Kale clutched a railing to avoid being swept along. "This is insane," he shouted, half laughing, half panicking. "Insane. Perhaps efficient, absolutely." Alara's ears twitched with amusement. She floated beside him, gliding with a grace that mocked his human clumsiness. "Try to keep up, human, or I'll make you do it in zero gravity next." As they navigated the twisting corridors, Kale began noticing more of her abilities. Small objects obeyed her will as if alive, from maintenance drones hovering in obedient formations to floating crates aligning perfectly along the walls. Each display of power was accompanied by subtle humor. She nudged a hovering crate toward him with a grin, "Catch it, or it's lunch," and Kale, flailing, nearly collided with a support beam. When they reached the engineering bay, the source of the drone malfunction became clear. A circuit panel had fried, sparking intermittently, sending pulses of erratic commands into the station's systems. Ilara's long fingers danced over the floating interface, her ears flicking like twin metronomes, and she muttered something that sounded like a cross between a lullaby and an incantation. A small assembly of drones floated toward her, aligning into patterns that resembled miniature constellations. See, Kale, even technology can be dramatic when left unattended. Kale crouched to inspect a floating panel, trying to understand, but the machinery seemed to resist him, obeying her presence rather than his. I don't know how you do that, he said, exasperated. I barely know how to turn on the lights without causing a fire. Alara smirked. Some things human are instinctive, like tripping over every obstacle in sight. You excel at that. She flicked her ears and a loose cable floated harmlessly in front of his face, sparing him a misstep. Kale groaned, realizing her humor was relentless, yet oddly reassuring. They worked together, Kale reluctantly following her lead as she rewired circuits midair, redirected errant drones with subtle gestures, and calibrated the station's systems with a precision that left him in awe. Occasionally, she teased him mercilessly. If you keep that up, I'll have to assign you to inventory duty counting floating screws. Exciting, I know. Kale laughed despite himself, recognizing that fear was giving way to trust, albeit begrudgingly. During a pause in the chaos, Kale noticed her more closely. Her skin shimmered faintly with bioluminescence, casting soft patterns on the walls. Her long ears twitched at the slightest sound, the hum of the reactors, the faint hiss of air pressure in distant corridors, even Kale's nervous muttering. There was something almost absurdly delicate about her, juxtaposed against the raw power she wielded. He realized that she had transformed the station into a stage for her abilities, blending humor, elegance, and efficiency in a way he could neither anticipate nor replicate. A loud clatter echoed behind them. Kale spun, tripping over a floating tool and crashed against a stack of crates. Ilara's laughter filled the corridor, soft and melodic, though slightly mischievous. See, I warned you about zero-gravity practice. She held out her hand, effortlessly catching him as he flailed. Humans really do require constant supervision. He huffed, trying to straighten his uniform, feeling more like a child being chided than a spacefaring professional. I'm fine, he protested, though his grin betrayed him. You're alive, which technically counts as fine, she said, floating a few inches above the floor, her long ears flicking with amusement. And now, thanks to you, I have the satisfaction of showing you exactly how much more entertaining teamwork can be with a little. She gestured broadly at the floating drones and levitating crates. Creativity. Kale couldn't help but laugh, the tension melting further. The drones, the misfiring circuits, the hovering tools, all dangerous, all chaotic, were transformed by her presence into something playful, almost like a bizarre game. He realized the fear he had brought onto himself had been a mix of rumor and imagination, exaggerated until it became an obstacle in his own mind. Hours seemed to pass in a blur of floating objects, erratic drones, and bursts of laughter punctuating the work. Kale stumbled, she caught him. A misaligned circuit sparked, she flicked it into order. Each moment blended science fiction spectacle with absurd levity, the terror of the unknown softened by her humor. Finally, with a satisfying ping, the last errant drone floated back into its charging dock. Systems stabilized. The lights dimmed to a calm hum. Kale leaned against a railing, catching his breath, and for the first time he felt a genuine sense of relief, not fear, not suspicion, but amusement and awe mixed together. Ilara floated beside him, ears swaying lazily. See, all threats neutralized, and not a single human consumed, she said, the corner of her mouth twitching into a teasing smile. Though I admit, a snack would have been entertaining. Kale shook his head, laughing. You're impossible. And yet, she said lightly, you're still here, alive, mostly unscathed, and now significantly more amusing. Congratulations, human. Her ears twitched as if applauding him. Kale realized that survival wasn't about raw courage. It was about adaptability, trust, and a willingness to laugh when the universe threw chaos at you. He looked around at the station, now quiet, drones obedient, tools hovering in neat formations, and he realized something profound. With her, the line between danger and delight blurred, and the galaxy, vast, alien, unpredictable, felt a little less threatening and a lot more intriguing. Kale stepped carefully along the observation deck, his boots sliding slightly in the low-gravity environment as he followed Alara. The stars outside glittered like scattered fragments of glass across the black canvas of space, distant and untouchable, yet somehow familiar in their rhythm. The station had settled into a calm hum after the drone incident, lights pulsing steadily, tools and drones floating obediently in their designated paths. Hale felt lighter, not physically, though the low gravity certainly helped, but in a way that made the earlier fear and suspicion seem almost absurd. He glanced at Alara, whose long ears twitched lazily, catching the faintest vibrations of the station, and he realized that her grace and power had become part of the environment, so natural that he no longer flinched at every shadow or mechanical hiccup. "You know," he began, unsure how to start, "I keep thinking about those rumors, all that talk about you eating humans." He trailed off, shaking his head because it now seemed ridiculous. Alara tilted her head, ears quivering as if savoring the memory. "Oh, the rumors, yes, those were rather entertaining." She floated closer, and Kale noticed the subtle shimmer in her skin that reflected the starlight outside. "Mostly, I fed the injured, repaired systems, and occasionally scared the bejesus out of curious humans who wandered where they shouldn't." Hale laughed, the sound echoing softly in the observation deck. "I guess I wasn't the only one who thought you were, well, terrifying." He shook his head again. "I mean, I almost ran screaming." "Almost," she teased, ears twitching like little flags in the wind. "I'm slightly disappointed in your restraint." She reached out and gently nudged a floating maintenance tool toward him, which he caught awkwardly. "But I suppose surviving counts as a moral victory for you." He studied her, realizing that his fear had been based on imagination and hearsay rather than reality. The rumors had painted her as a predator, but the truth was that she protected, repaired, and maintained life with a meticulous care he had only begun to understand. He realized that his perspective had been narrow, shaped by panic and ignorance. The galaxy he now saw was full of beings who didn't fit neatly into categories of friend or foe. Why all the humor? He asked, curiosity overtaking caution. "During the drone incident, the floating objects, your playful teasing, why not just get it done seriously?" Alara's smile widened. "Ah, human, humor is a tool as potent as technology or telekinesis. It disarms fear, teaches patience, and occasionally reminds you that the universe doesn't have to be terrifying at every moment. Besides," she added, flicking her ears toward him with a grin, "if I didn't joke, you might have fainted in the first corridor and that would have been boring." Hale chuckled, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. He had come aboard the station tense, suspicious, full of anxiety about survival, and he now realized that the journey had changed him. Fear had given way to curiosity, suspicion to trust, and the unknown had transformed from a threat into a canvas of possibilities. He had learned patience, humility, and the value of humor in the face of the incomprehensible. A soft ping echoed from the communication console. Alara floated over and tapped a sequence, and a holographic message materialized, showing the station's logs. Hale leaned closer, and his heart skipped a beat. The recordings revealed that the rumors had been wildly exaggerated, deliberate misinformation designed to keep humans away from this sector, while Alara worked on humanitarian projects across the outlying colonies. She had rescued stranded humans, repaired failing systems, and experimented with ecological stabilizers for planets in distress. Not a single instance of malice existed, only meticulous care masked by fear and misunderstanding. Hale exhaled, so none of it was true. He looked at Alara, who nodded, her long ears tilting with a hint of mischief. All of it was human paranoia. "Mostly," she said, floating closer, her gaze softening. "Curiosity, imagination, fear, it's a potent combination. You humans excel at dramatizing danger, but it's not entirely bad, it's how you survive and how you learn." Hale smiled, a genuine relaxed expression. "I think I've learned more from you than I ever expected. About fear, trust, and apparently gravity-defying crates." Alara chuckled, the sound rippling like a soft melody. "And I've learned that humans are far more resilient than they think. Also, that tripping over floating tools is a universal trait." She flicked her ears, teasing him gently. Kale laughed, shaking his head. "I suppose I'll accept that as a compliment." The station system stabilized completely, drones returned to their docks, and the hum of life support seemed almost musical now. Kale realized that he could navigate this environment without panic, without suspicion, and even without humor failing him. He had grown not in muscle or technical skill, but in perspective and adaptability. Fear had been replaced by curiosity, suspicion by trust, isolation by companionship. Allura floated to the railing beside him, leaning against it with a casual elegance. "The stars," she said softly, "they're not threats. They're opportunities, and now, human, you see that too." Her ears twitched at the distant hum of the station, sensitive to every vibration yet relaxed, playful. Kale nodded, feeling a profound sense of closure. He no longer saw the galaxy as a place of lurking dangers and malevolent beings. He saw it as vast, unpredictable, and filled with life that could be terrifying, beautiful, and even funny, all at once. And standing beside him was a being who had taught him that lesson in ways no manual or rumor ever could. "Do you ever get lonely out here?" he asked, glancing at her. "Sometimes," she admitted, her voice softening. "But then someone like you shows up, full of fear and curiosity, and I'm reminded why I do this. To protect, to challenge, to laugh at absurdity with someone who almost expects doom around every corner." She flicked her ears with a teasing smirk. "Also, it's nice to have a witness to my impeccable skills." Hale grinned. "I'll be your witness, though I can't promise I won't trip over something in the process." "Fair enough," she said, her smile warm, long ears brushing the air like a gentle punctuation to their conversation. "Just remember, human, surviving isn't always about brute strength. Sometimes it's about perspective, humor, and knowing when to trust someone, even if they look terrifying at first." The stars stretched endlessly beyond the observation deck, and for the first time, Kale felt that he belonged in the vast